Hello and welcome to the talk on pharmacology at Bath. During this presentation, I'd like to give you an outline of the pharmacology course at Bath, highlight some of our key features of our course, and hopefully encourage you to think about coming to study pharmacology with us. My name is Dr. Christine Edmead. I am the Director of Studies of Pharmacology as well as the admissions tutor. This means I have an overall responsibility of maintaining and supporting student progression through the programme, input into curriculum design and delivery, along with my colleagues in the pharmacology department. If you have any questions after this talk, I'm very happy to receive inquiries through my email address, c.e.edmead@bath.ac.uk. Now, pharmacology at Bath is slightly different from some of the other universities. Normally you will find pharmacology associated with life science and pharmacy as part of a medical school. We feel the two disciplines go very well hand in hand. They both have the ultimate aim of improving patient quality of life through administration of medications. So whilst the pharmacist is on the front line in dispensing the medications and providing direct patient support, the pharmacologist is the one in the background who's been carrying out research to understand more about the disease processes and also how we can develop better medications with less side effects to treat the disease in a very efficacious manner. So the department is an integrated department with pharmacy. We also have strong groups in medicinal chemistry and pharmacokinetics, and this gives a very sort of rich input to the programme. I'll take you through some of the courses that we take within the programme. Students from other courses also elect to study a number of our pharmacology units. So you may be taught alongside natural science students, biomedical science students, or students from biology and biochemistry. And again, bringing in their different backgrounds, their different knowledge enriches the discussions and the information that we share within those lectures. Now, pharmacology itself is quite a small degree programme. We annually recruit around 40 students. This gives us fairly small class sizes. So whilst in first year lectures you may be taught alongside pharmacy students and natural science students, lecture groups up to about 150, 170 students. Once we get into second year and into workshops and laboratory, we're just teaching pharmacology students on their own. So it's a nice small group. You get to know everybody, we get to know you, and there's lots of hands-on time and interaction time to ask questions. We have dedicated research facilities and a dedicated teaching laboratory. You can see in the bottom picture here. This is just for pharmacology students. And we have a range of experimental setups that I'll talk you through a little bit later. Top picture shows the bioimaging suite, and we try and expose all our pharmacology students to current research throughout the programme. So in the background you can see an image of inside a cell, the neuronal cells and the cell bodies. So we can look at protein localization, we can look at DNA molecules within the cell. And this gives us a really good idea about what's going wrong in disease pathology, because we can look at changes within the cells right down at the molecular level. And this gives us a lot of information about changes in molecular targets, which then become biological targets for drugs. So why choose pharmacology? Now, a lot of students or potential applicants that we've talked to come to us and say, well, I'm interested in biology and chemistry, or I'm interested in medical science, but there's such an array of degree programs out there that I don't really know which one to choose. And that's very true. There is a lot of choice out there for you. But I think what the beauty of pharmacology is that it unites a lot of these degree programs. So there's elements of immunology, there's elements of genetics, so how our DNA, our individual DNA, affects our response to drugs, how our immune system and how the shaping of our immune system affects our response to disease and to drugs. Cell biology, the pharmacologist needs to understand how cells work, in a physiological state, how they normally work, and what things go wrong in disease. A lot of disease areas where we're focusing on research at the moment are around neuroscience, things like Alzheimer's disease and dementia. We really need to understand the mechanisms that are going wrong in these in the brain to be able to identify potential molecular targets to design new drug therapies. And obviously underpinning all this is drug discovery. So I think where pharmacology comes in, it's the science of drugs in the body, the mechanisms of action of those drugs. So, but it goes further than that. It's really understanding the disease processes. So the whole story of our pharmacology program is really to understand the human body, understand how the human body should work and function, from cells right through to tissues and organ systems and the whole organism. And then to understand what changes occur during the pathology, during the development of disease, how those diseases come about, what molecules are dysregulated, what pathways are dysregulated, which dysregulate cellular function, and then how we can come in with pharmacological agents, be those small chemical entities, biological molecules such as antibodies, or even DNA now is being used as a drug, as a therapeutic agent, and how we can take those safely through the drug discovery process to ensure that we've got an efficacious and safe drug that can be launched onto the market and into the clinic for the patient. So pharmacology brings together a large number of these cell biology, human physiology areas and takes it forward and says, okay, we understand what's going on. How can we then build on this to improve patient quality of life through drug discovery? So it's a very vocational subject. Majority of our graduates go on to either do further research and then end up in big pharmaceutical companies or in academia or in research institutes. Other students go on to support the communication of science through publications, scientific writing. Others go into sales and marketing for companies with a good understanding of the scientific methodology that underpins a lot of the research. So there is very good employment. In the current climate, the majority of our students are in employment after 6 months after graduation. We're always going to need new drugs. We're always developing new approaches, new technologies, and that is allowing us to have a greater insight into the complexity of current disease areas. So if we think that something like cancer, where we've made fairly good progress, that's largely due to advances in technologies and understanding the disease process of cancer. Where we're still struggling a little is in areas of neuroscience, Alzheimer's, where we still don't really have a good understanding of the pathological processes of the disease, and therefore it's more difficult to know which aspects to treat. So pharmacology is a very practical science. It's a very hands-on science for students who like being in the laboratory, like learning through doing, questioning, wonder what's going to happen if. And often there are no answers in pharmacology, or no correct answers. We ask the question, we carry out the investigation, we observe and we analyse the results, and we make deductions from those results, and that carries us forward. So what are the key features of pharmacology at Bath? Well, again, unlike some other degree programmes where you enter a life science degree in your first year, and then at the end of that first year you can choose to specialise in pharmacology or neuroscience. At Bath, we very much believe that you've done your research, you understand what pharmacology is, and you've selected that you want to study pharmacology. So we teach you pharmacology from day one. So right from the beginning of the course, by mid-October, you're in the laboratories, carrying out experimental design, analysing results from using statistical analysis to evaluate the effectiveness of compounds on biological tissue. You can see one of our students here in the pharmacology lab observing the effect of drugs on isolated tissue. As I've said previously, there's a strong emphasis on practical work. So in year one, you'll have a 3-hour practical almost every other week. By year two, we're spending at least one day a week in the lab. So you can really get immersed in the practical work, really think about the mechanisms, what's going wrong, gather good data, interpret results. We feature both traditional and new technologies. So traditionally, pharmacology is defined as the biological action of drugs. So action of drugs on biological tissue to evoke functional responses. And but we also more and more these days are moving towards the molecular level. So there's a lot of also study of DNA, of proteins, observing how these change in the disease process, and that often gives us a lot of information about the dysregulation that's occurring in disease and where we should be intervening with pharmacological agents. We take all of our students through the Home Office training modules. So if you carry on in research science, some of you may be carrying out investigations in animals. We have to currently use animal models to look at the efficacy of drugs. We can do a certain amount at cell level and at molecular level, but ultimately we are designing drugs to go into a whole organism, a human organism, human being. So we need to make sure that that drug is efficacious in the body and also safe. So for example, we could be designing a drug to treat asthma, to relax the airways. But some of the proteins in the airways, the receptors in the airways, are very similar to those in the heart. So whilst the new drug may cause relaxation of the airways, it may cause stimulation of the heart. Obviously, that wouldn't be good in patients with any cardiac features. So also, once a drug is in the body, it becomes metabolized and then it has to be excreted through the kidneys. So some of these metabolites could potentially be toxic. So throughout the drug discovery process, whilst we can do a lot of the initial work in cells and in isolated tissue, ultimately we have to move into animal models. So in order to work with animals, it's necessary for people to hold a personal license from the Home Office. So we take all our students through the Home Office training, and this covers all the ethics and the legislation of animal work. You carry out the Home Office exam, and this gives you eligibility to apply for a Home Office licence should you later go on to do any work with animals. We have a very established and strong placement programme. I'm going to talk a little bit about the placements a little bit later on, and also the option to tailor your course in final year to specific areas of interest. So why choose pharmacology at Bath? Well, I think the main thing, I'm not going to go through all the league table data, but one of the main things is we listen to our students very well. We ask for student opinion. Students are involved in the design and the development of the programme. We've listened to students on placement and also their supervisors and fed that back into the development of the course so we can ensure that students are being adequately prepared for both their placement and future employment. As a result of this, student satisfaction on the course is extremely high. 2017, we had 100% satisfaction for our Master of Pharmacology programme. Majority of our students are employed 6 months after graduation, and so they go into a range of employment types, from research science to supporting careers. And it feeds both ways. The students feed back to us about their teaching and their learning experience, and they've nominated a number of their lecturers for teaching awards. We're also very proud of a lot of our students. We encourage our students to get involved in the research community and to attend and present at conferences. So every year there's an annual conference run by our national society, the British Pharmacological Society. All of our undergraduate students are eligible to become student members, and a number of them will attend the Christmas conference after their placement year and present their placement work. Here's one of our students presenting a flash presentation at the conference where he had 2 minutes to outline his project and the key findings of his project. And other students present posters, as you can see in the background, to talk about their research work. And a number of students have won prizes at this conference for the best presentations, the best posters, and a number of our postgraduate students have also won prizes through the Eden Ravencroft prizes. So we take this as a positive feedback that we are preparing our students well for a career in research, and that they have the knowledge and confidence to present their work to scientists from around the world. Now, the teaching on the programme. So we run a modular system here at Bath, and it's based also around a semester outline. So we have 2 semesters a year. The first one runs from October through to the end of January, and the second from the beginning of February through to around the beginning of June. In that time, we have 11 weeks of teaching, followed by some revision time, and then an assessment period. So currently we have 11 weeks of teaching from October to Christmas, Christmas break, a revision period in January, followed by 2 weeks of assessment, then have an inter-semester break, and then begin teaching again at the beginning of February through to just after Easter with a 2-week Easter break, and again revision period and then assessment during May. So some units or modules you will study just in one semester, and some are all year units. So we begin year 1 with the foundation, the important material that forms the base of your knowledge. So we think about how the human body should work, the physiological processes. So building on information that you may have studied at school and college in biology, but it builds from sort of GCSE biology. So even if you haven't done A level, don't worry, we will build up the information slowly from our first lectures being, remember this is a mammalian cell, it has a plasma membrane around the outside and a nucleus, and then we look at the organelles within the cell, we look at the cell structure, and we start to think about how we can take a drug molecule, which might be a very polar hydrophilic molecule, across that very lipophilic hydrophobic membrane. So molecules to medicines thinks much more about the chemical structure of molecules, both chemicals and biological molecules, the properties of them, and how do we take a chemical molecule and turn it into a drug. So these theoretical lecture units are built on with laboratory research skills and introduction to experimental pharmacology. So this gets you into the lab. We teach you experimental design. So what we really want to our students to appreciate is the planning that goes into a good experiment, so that every experiment we carry out is valid, it's got valid controls, we know exactly what we're measuring, we've understood what's analysis and what statistical analysis we're going to carry out before we start the experiment. So we have good, valid, solid results at the end that you can then write up in laboratory reports. During the research skills, we also develop scientific academic writing, numeracy skills. Moving on to year 2, we start to focus on disease areas. So central nervous system pharmacology looks at diseases such as Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, epilepsy, depression and anxiety. Receptors to genes looks at molecular level, so right through from receptors on the cell surface through signaling pathways to the nucleus to gene transcription, what regulates these processes and how they can become dysregulated in disease. We look at the drug discovery process right through from the idea of which disease we're going to target and which molecules target validation, right the way through to lead compound optimization, preclinical testing, and out into phase trials in humans. Semester 2, we look at cardiovascular, so stroke and atherosclerosis, infection and immunity, so how does the immune system affect our health, and how can we harness and manipulate the immune system to help us treat diseases, not only pathogenic diseases, such as we're facing at the moment with the virus, but also how can we use the immune system to target cancer. Pharmacokinetics thinks very much about how the drug acts in the body. What does the body do to the drug? What does the drug do to the body? And dosages, so absorption, distribution, metabolism and excretion. And those are supported again by experimental units where students are in the lab testing out new drugs, thinking about mechanisms of action, thinking about how we can manipulate these mechanisms to treat the patient. Year 3, for those students who take a placement year, spent out in placement, and so I'll come back to that. Year 4, students then return to university to carry out a final year project, and then we undertake some core units to bring you up to speed with current developments in research and current technologies. And then in second semester is an opportunity to tailor your course to specific interests. So if you have a specific interest in Alzheimer's or in cancer, you can take advanced options in these areas. So how do we teach our programs? Well, we use a variety of teaching techniques. So, for example, the central nervous system pharmacology unit in year 2, we'll talk about the mechanisms of action. We'll talk about the disease processes, the changes that have occurred from the normal physiological responses, and how that's given us an identification of what's going wrong in the disease. We'll then look at the mechanism of action and of current treatment programs, how they work, what their limitations might be, why they may not work all the time, or what side effects, what might be the cause of those side effects. And then we talk about potential and novel targets. So how else could we try and treat this disease, coming with a different approach? It's no good just making another drug of the same form that's currently on the market. We need to take a novel approach to get better efficacious treatments. And how is modern technology and developments in our understanding and visualization of disease processes helping in developing those new drugs? And then very importantly, the application of knowledge. It's no good just learning new knowledge. You need to know how to apply this to novel situations. So we spend quite a lot of time supporting our students in learning to think outside the box and apply their knowledge through case studies. So a typical week in year 2, you might have around 8 lectures. So it says an hour, but typically these are 50-minute lectures. Generally, most of them will be sort of PowerPoint based. We put our slides up on Moodle, our learning environment, before the lecture, so you can look through the slides, you can print them out, or you can bring your laptops and tablets along to lectures and take annotated notes. A number of our lectures are also recorded, so you can always go back to the recordings after the lecture and make further notes or listen to parts of the lecture again. Workshops, these tend to either be paper-based exercises, so we might ask you to work through a worksheet either before or in groups during the workshop, or it might be something like human physiology, where we're looking at the effect of exercise on heart rate, and so we're taking you take your heart rate and then get you to do some exercise and take it again and think about the mechanisms, the adaptive mechanisms that are occurring in the body and how these might change in disease. Tutorials range from so they're small groups, so sort of 5 to 10 students. They might be either sort of chemistry-based problems, or they might be personal tutorials with your personal tutor, looking at skills such as reading scientific papers or developing your scientific writing style. By year 2, you're spending a whole day, at least a week in practical classes. We do give you lunch if you're good, but again, this allows you to really immerse yourself in the topic and test out a range of drugs that think about the different mechanisms. We also encourage students to go along to the research seminars. So these are given by PhD students or staff or external speakers from the university on their research, and it broadens your understanding of the field and current developments. So our lectures, we try and make them as interactive as possible. So as well as doing the PowerPoint presentation, we intersperse those with quiz questions, with discussion topics, case study based workshops as well. So the students may have had a series of lectures on the immune system, and then in the class we might divide the class into two halves and ask one of them to discuss how the immune system would treat a case of food poisoning, and how the other half of the class might discuss how the immune system would approach a cold or flu virus. So obviously the food poisoning is bacterial driven, cold or flu is viral driven, and the types of cells and the way that the body deals with this is very different. Obviously, if we can support the body in a bacterial infection using antibiotics, but we know that they're not functional against viruses, and therefore we need to have a different approach. We're looking towards sort of vaccination-based approaches. So we try and encourage the students to sort of think about the knowledge that they've built up through the lectures and be able to apply these to case studies. As I said, we record a number of our lectures, and also in certain cases we may record sections of information for the students to watch before the lecture. So you can watch these in your own time. Students quite like them because they can stop and start them and take notes, and it's much easier than trying to stop and start a lecture. So and you can think about the information that's being delivered, you can think up any questions that you may have, and then come along to the lectures and be prepared to discuss the information that you've learned and apply it to a case study. We also have voting systems. So most of you are getting a little bit too young now to remember Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, where they ask the audience. But we have similar systems to use at university. So from your tablets or your smartphones or online through the computers, we can put up quiz questions. We can ask students to vote anonymously. Sometimes there might be a right or wrong answer. Sometimes it might be a discussion point, a point of view. And that initiates discussion and also gives you feedback on your understanding and learning, so that we can just understand whether students have grasped the topic or whether we need to spend more time talking about the topic. And it gives you feedback on your learning. Have you understood the topic? So we use a range of approaches and techniques to try and make the sessions as interactive as possible. We also put a range of online resources, other videos, YouTube clips, quizzes on Moodle for you to self-test. Now, a big part of our programme at Bath are the placements. So many of our students, probably about 95% of our students on the pharmacology programme, elect to do a placement, but there is a 3-year BSc programme without placements, so it is your choice. You can set up for a range of students. On the Master of Pharmacology, which is our 4-year integrated programme, students undertake a 12-month period of placement within a pharmaceutical company, a research institute or another university, either in the UK or abroad, and undertake full-time lab work. So they will have their own dedicated project. So we are very spend a lot of time to ensure that students are going to get maximum benefit from the placement. You're not just doing the filing or helping out here and there as another pair of hands. You'll have your own autonomous project that you're responsible for, and you design the project with the help of your supervisor and report your findings from the project and help it develop over the year. Also, because it's an integrated placement, so it's worth 34% of your degree programme. So during the year, you also do 2 dissertations or essays, one around your project area and one historically about developments in pharmacology. The placement year is assessed by a research project report that you write at the end of your placement, and then we carry out a short viva. Now, students get a little bit scared when we say viva, but it's a time just to chat about your project and what went well and what approaches you took and why you took those approaches and how you would do things differently or how you would take it forward. Students find they really obviously they've been studying it for a year, they know it very well, and they feel that they can actually enjoy talking about their project. And when the students return after their placement year, we have a placement conference where they present to all their peers and then we take them out to dinner as a welcome back to their final year. We also run a 3-year bachelor course, which can be taken with an optional placement, so you can do a BSc with placement, and there's slightly more flexibility. So the aim is that we offer a range of programs so students can choose which is the most appropriate. So Master of Pharmacology is designed very much for students who perhaps forward thinking of going into scientific research, perhaps in a pharmaceutical company or an academic research career, and want to carry out at the bench research science. For the BSc programme, some of these students perhaps may want to use their pharmacology more theoretically and going to supporting careers of scientific writing, marketing, technology support, event organisation. But also, if you want to carry out a research placement, that's fine as well. That's an option. So there's more range and flexibility on the BSc course. It doesn't have to be lab-based if you want to do a different pharmacologically associated placement. We have a very successful placement programme. We've been running placements for a large number of years, and we manage to place every single student who wants a placement. We don't guarantee to find you a placement, but we do everything we can to support you in finding one. So the companies will advertise with us. We pass those adverts on to you. We give you support in CV writing, cover letters, applications. We do mock interviews with you, and 100% of our students who would like a placement are successful in finding one. We usually have 1 or 2 placements to spare. So the whole range of locations, both in the UK and abroad, and this map shows you some of the places where we've had students on placement. So there are universities in Australia, in America, in New York and Boston. We've got research institutes in Spain and Italy. We've got pharmaceutical companies in Germany and in Belgium, as well as a whole range of university and companies within the UK. So almost whatever environment, wherever you want to do your placement, we can try and support you in finding that placement. And students get an awful lot out of the placement year, both in experience and knowledge, and it gives them a really good insight into what a career in pharmacology is about. On returning from university, students will carry out a final year project. Now, again, unlike some other universities, because you've just spent a whole year in the lab, or for master's students that have spent a year in the lab, or BSc students who've done a lab-based placement, rather than doing another lab-based final year project, we support you in writing a grant proposal. So if you wanted to go on to do further research, especially in research institutes or academia, you would have to apply for funding for your research. So you would need to say, this is my idea, this is what I want to do, this is how I would go about it. So it's very different from a lab report which says, this is what I did and this is what I observed. It's much more forward thinking and of justifying your idea and your approaches. So it's a very good skill to develop at undergraduate level, as it will help you through your postgraduate and employment career. We also carry out a Dragon's Den, so students are allocated a therapeutic area and they have to research a novel drug target and then stand up and justify their target. And it's a little competition, but rather than sort of thousands of pounds, it's usually the prize is usually a bar of chocolate. We have a lot of engagement with speakers from industry, so a lot of our placement supervisors and people that have been involved in developing drugs through industry come and talk to the final year students to show them how drug development occurs. And then I say there's a range of advanced units where you can specialise in particular areas and follow interests that you might want to take forward in your future career. One of our popular units is the public engagement unit, where students work in small teams to engage the public with research at Bath. So they work with a researcher in the pharmacology or pharmacy department and arrange a public engagement event. That might be a talk in a pub, or to a patient group, or to a school, and they carry out activities and surveys and quizzes to broaden knowledge of the research that's going on at Bath. So as I said at the beginning, there's very good employment opportunities for pharmacologists. There's a whole range of degree programs that you can, or sort of advanced programs that you can go on to through MSc and PhD research. And some of our students go on to do graduate medicine. Some go directly into working in the pharmaceutical industry as research scientists and in the biotech companies. Some go into academia to become lecturers and teaching fellows. Some go into healthcare analysis, communications, and some go into sales and marketing. So it's a platform for leading on to a whole range of employment opportunities. So I said we offer two courses at Bath: the Master of Pharmacology course, which is a 4-year integrated course which includes the placement year. The placement year is then worth a third of your degree programme. Alternatively, a Bachelor of Science, which is a 3-year straight degree at university, but you can also take the option of doing a Bachelor of Science with a placement year, where the placement is an optional placement year, but it gives you flexibility about whether it's lab-based. Each year we have about 165 applications for 40 places, so that's a fairly good ratio of around 1 to 4. So I hope that's given you a little bit of insight into pharmacology at Bath and perhaps inspired you to look further into coming to study with us. And if you have any questions, then please do not hesitate to contact myself or the department. We will be happy to talk further. Thank you.